Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bad Batch breakdown over on the Cinefanatics. I would say we are the Cinefanatics, but I am, and this is the guest host,
And
Adam,
I am
the fan
also a
favorite.
fanatic of cinema. I am just not a cinema fanatic. It's a small detail, really.
Yeah, just really small,
Yeah.
it's work with what you got.
The point is, we love Star Wars, and we're here to talk about Star Wars because Star Wars is great, always.
Absolutely. And you know who else is great? You're great, Adam, and I appreciate you being here, joining us, and talking Star Wars with me. That's
Well, I appreciate it. Nice
yeah.
to be here. Yeah. This is really fun because I just wrapped up the fourth episode. I was tried to watch it last night. I got too tired. I've been out of town shooting and stuff like that, and I got three watched last night over dinner. And then so I was just like, oh my god, like can we go at 6:15? I'm still watching. So it's kind of exciting. I'm coming right off it's how we do the Ford Fiesta too. We're like watch the movie and immediately react, and so that's really fun. But
So you got the hype already. You're ready to get into it. Just go,
yeah,
yeah, I feel it. Yeah, so I'm ready to get into it, guys. If you have any questions, any comments when you're popping in the chat, keep in mind we are talking about the spoilers of these episodes. So if you haven't seen them, maybe not watch right now and come back later. Otherwise, if you have any questions, comments, streamlabs.com/cinefanatics, fantastic place to do that. And we can we'll also see you in the chat too. So let's jump on in.
yeah.
Episode 3 and 4. These were both actually really interesting because they were both I know we were talking a little bit before this. We decided they were both like very one-off
Yeah,
episodes.
their little adventures. And I was curious about that from the beginning because obviously that first 70 some minute episode,
Mhm.
it's just laying a lot of groundwork. In fact, my roommate, we were sitting down to dinner and I'm doing this show where I've talked about the Bad Batch. Do you mind if we watch an episode? And I was on episode 2 at that point and I started it and then immediately got like 5 questions. I was like, all right, tell me what, I don't know if you're a huge fan of this yet, but let's just go back and start because there's so much setup going on. And even in episode 2, I felt like there was still some setup to their journey going on. But I couldn't wait to find out what the tone and feel of just a good old Bad Batch adventure, because this has always been described as the A-Team in space.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I always love the formula of the A-Team TV show. It's like, they're wayward guys, they're underground, they're going here and there. They have this large overall mission, but in between, and also just like the old Fugitive TV show, like the Incredible Hulk TV show,
Yeah.
you're taking a journey and you wind up in a town and you're like, the locals need help. Well, it's a good thing we're the best of the best, and I'm like, let's help some folks. So I was kind of curious when this show was going to settle into just individual one-off adventures, and that's what we got in these 2 episodes.
And I feel like that honestly makes the most sense too, especially because we're doing those one-off adventures with the backdrop of the Empire shifting things and becoming the Empire that we know. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really cool tone. It's a really cool idea to bring us into those kinds of adventures while the mayhem that we know of Star Wars is forming behind us.
That is the most fascinating thing about this so we'll start with episode 3 here because, and go in order because episode 3 has the transition from clones to troops to recruited troops. They're not
Yeah.
Slaves yet. These are actual recruited troops that they bring in.
Mhm.
And I love the Imperial stuff. Tarkin, boy, I mean, Tarkin in the first 2 episodes that we saw might be more Tarkin than he even is in Star Wars. Like, you're
Yeah.
just like, wow, this guy is a bad guy. And you just fear him. He's not, and I always remember that in Star Wars too. You're like, Darth Vader's the bad guy. And you're like, he takes all his orders from this other guy. It never quite made sense why, this government nudnik would hold all the strings. But in this one, he is the bad guy. There's no Darth Vader in this particular story. And conscripted soldiers, somebody said.
Okay.
So what's cool about this one is we're seeing all that we're like, all right, let's test out, because also that's a great thing that we just took as plot line of the Bad Batch themselves.
Mhm.
Is that the Order 66 chip isn't working in some of their heads. Obviously, Crosshair, they get it to work and turn him into the main bad soldier, the leader of their new troop. I mean, that's who is put in charge of these new troops.
Yeah.
Is Crosshair. And immediately you see that same sort of like Finn saying, I can't kill innocent people, because he, in what is it, episode 2 or maybe 1, that Tarkin sends the Bad Batch to go kill Saw Gerrera's soldiers and people that he's rescued, and they won't do it. So he's like, well, okay, let's have a proper test of these new and improved stormtroopers that are not subject to Kamino's training or whatever, that can actually be under the thumb. Let's see if they can go do the job. And the first thing that happens is somebody's like, I'm not killing a bunch of innocents. And Crosshair, meanwhile, he's still got the program. He's like, yeah, we are, because we are just following orders. How great is that voice, that Crosshair? Villainous, just dripping with villainy.
That's what I love about D. Bradley Baker, is that he's actually like, he's doing the voice of all of them, and he's able to give each and every one of them an individual personality, like, while still keeping it to the, I'm doing the clone voice that we picked up, off of Tamora Morrison playing all the clones in the movies, and now trying to turn that into all the clones and give them individual voices. That's an impressive voice talent.
Yeah, I was shocked when the credits rolled on the first episode, because my first thought was, oh, D. Bradley Baker, we finally, because I've listened to all those voices and I go, they do sound like D. Bradley Baker a little bit, but they're obviously different. And I thought, oh, finally a big break. Not only do none of the clones look exactly alike, but they have different voices now. And then the credits roll and it's like, D. Bradley Baker as all the clones. I'm like, what?
Guy's working overtime. Pay him 5 times as much.
Now, one of the soldiers that's in the crew that they send down to, is it Onderon is where they send them to? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is one of the characters from the Star Wars video game, right? I recognized one of the Imperial pilots is one of them that goes good, I believe, in one of the video games. I should look that up.
I'm not sure about that. The video games are a whole sphere that I haven't really tapped into myself. So
yeah, I mean, I just got a PlayStation 4 when the pandemic started, and so I was like, finally, the only reason I wanted one to begin with was like, there's all these Star Wars games I've missed because I hadn't played in years or whatever.
Right.
I'm gonna look this up real quick.
But the other thing is that you brought up Tarkin, and what I love about what you brought up about Tarkin is that we start with him, we see his journey from the Clone Wars, towards the tail end of the Clone Wars. He pops in there, and he's somebody that Anakin and Ahsoka have to go save as a person who's part of the military and everything, and kind of seeing him going from I'm part of the Republic and all that, but kind of hearing he starts giving kind of his thoughts in terms of how soldiers should be and everything back in the Clone Wars. And so we kind of see the seeds being planted then, and now we fast forward to the Bad Batch, and we see him full on Tarkin mode, like you said, which I love, because if you go back to A New Hope, you go back to the first Star Wars, he was essentially the main bad guy of that movie. Yeah, Darth Vader was just kind of looming. He was more of a henchman at that point.
Yeah, he was the heavy, which is fascinating, because one thing I give gigantic credit to the sequel trilogy is that they kept certain beats. People criticize them. They're like, oh, it's got some of the same beats as Star Wars. I'm like, guys, that's super on purpose. But one of them was that in the first movie, it's Tarkin that's running the show, just like in The Force Awakens, it's Hux. Hux, or even the what's his face, the villainous evil
Kylo?
Evil Jedi. No. So what happens then is Kylo Ren becomes the proper leader in the second one, just like in The Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, well, now Tarkin's gone. Now it's all Darth Vader. Just like in The Last Jedi, now it's all Kylo Ren. That's a really nice little comparison. Okay, I did look it up. It is Snoke. Yeah, I couldn't remember Snoke.
Oh, Snoke, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold a couple. Well, and the interesting thing about that is you don't meet the Emperor till Return of the Jedi. One of the great mix-ups and flips around that they do in the sequel trilogy is you get the Emperor right away in Snoke as well. Is one of the fun things. Iden Versio is the name of one of the pilots, and that is the main character of Battlefront 2.
Oh, okay.
So it's just, again, an Easter egg. She might come back. I mean, obviously she's going to come back. We didn't even see them at all in episode 4. But
she was one of the newly recruited soldiers that were going with Crosshair.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and just an Easter egg at this point, because it's like, oh, I recognize her. That's Iden Versio.
That's what I love about what they're doing with these shows and everything, is that they can actually pepper some of that stuff in. I know like there's some people out there that complain about that. It's like, oh, it's the same characters. Like, no. This is universe building, and it's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and also it's like the references. Like I'm here. I thought of that when we'll get to episode 4, but there's a speeder bike in there, and that sound of the speeder bike from Return of the Jedi as it races off into the that sort of just hearing that, I'm like, that is a character in Star Wars too. That is as much as seeing like if Han Solo showed up. I'm like, oh, Han Solo. I'm like, I hear that sound effect. I'm like, oh, speeder bikes. I just love it. Like, I'm more. Even the readouts that they have. If you notice the shape of the readout in say episode 4, when they're watching the moon of Yavin come in and all that sort of stuff, it's got this sort of shape to it. And, you know, the readouts in the Bad Batch have that exact same shape. And I'm like, it's like so Star Wars. It's every little bit of it. It's really cool.
That, you know, not to go too far off, but yeah, that's what I love about what they've done with like Star Wars and everything, is that obviously the older movies being from the 70s and 80s, taking that aesthetic from there and just, we realized that back in those days, the aesthetic is kind of dated, but we've just now made that the aesthetic of Star Wars. And now I don't even look at the original trilogy anymore and go, oh, it's dated. No, I go, this is Star Wars. This is how Star Wars has always looked. This is how Star Wars is still looking.
And it's always been the aesthetic of the used universe, you know, that the ships are beat up, that everything's kind of old school. Everyone's always made fun of the fact that when you look at a hologram, it's always interfered with, and you can see the CRT lines like from a monitor on the holograms. Well, that's was on purpose, and that's part of the used universe aesthetic. So when it comes down to activate the Death Star to destroy Alderaan, those are just Grass Valley switchers, like TV switchers. You know, they're just pushing little switcher knobs and that sort of thing. But now, even in this, when they activate any device, you're like, just because. In 1977, they're like, well, what should we have to make for the buttons? Let's just put a Grass Valley switcher in there. You know, now in the Bad Batch, they have to have Grass Valley switcher knobs because that is a part of the Star Wars aesthetic. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's great. That's the one thing I always like wondered as a kid, like, not, you know, let's give away my age here. He's a young guy.
You give away yours, I'll give away mine.
I grew up with the prequel trilogy. Like that was these, obviously I, you know, grew up with the original trilogy too, but the prequel trilogy.
But you didn't see episode 4 6 times in the theater like I did.
Exactly.
In its original run.
Exactly. I got maybe the re-releases.
Well, that is what's cool. For your generation is you did get to see them in the theater again, which is pretty awesome. Like, you know, the sequel trilogy generation, you know, people that are the age I was for the original trilogy and your age for the prequel trilogy didn't really get that hit of seeing the originals in theater, which is too bad.
But yeah, no, I love that you were saying that used aesthetic that they have, because like I remember watching the prequel trilogy, obviously in the theaters when I was younger. I had already seen the original trilogy at that point, and I was like, those ships are too shiny. They're too new looking. This doesn't make sense that this takes place before. All the ships that I know of already are kind of clunky and hard angles and everything. And then now it's like, okay, well, obviously that we're talking about technology from back then to technology now, but they explain it away in universe by saying Empire came in. Mm-hmm. This is everything is under control by the Empire.
I'm kind of shocked that was a surprise. Well, all the criticism of the prequel trilogy, I'm kind of shocked with, because I'm like, do you guys know what Star Wars is? I mean, what did you just come in? Did you think you were just going to go see, Extreme Measures? And you're like, well, let's go see this other movie called Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. Like, oh, this is a weird movie. Like, what? But it's like when I went into The Phantom Menace, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. Everything's going to be clean and new, and like compared to the other one, that is after everything broke down. Yeah. But going back to the Bad Batch, it's fun to watch these connections. I did not expect this TV show to deliver. Here's the transition from clone troops to conscripted troops. Yeah. I'm like, oh, and here we go. It's the everyday life in the Empire. Yeah.
I don't know if we knew going into this, if we were all fully aware that this was the time period that the Bad Batch was taking place in, or if we just thought, oh, we're just going to go on adventures. But I guess because Echo was a part of it, then we had to, okay, well, it has to be after their Clone Wars arc. So
yeah,
I guess, yeah.
But I was surprised. I mean, the how the first one just makes there's so many points of view you can do on any Star Wars. The main movies are very brief in what they present. It's part of the aesthetic of it is like, oh no, this is episode 4. There's all kinds of other stuff happen. But anyway, there's a Jedis and a thing, and try and keep up, audience. That's Star Wars. So it is. I did not expect to see a different point of view of Order 66, which is still just absolutely brilliant in the first episode of like, wow, what was it like to be there the day of Order 66 as a troop whose chip didn't work and didn't turn on the Jedi to watch that happen? That's some good drama that still overshadows everything that's happening in each of these episodes.
Yeah, and it's something that I think Bad Batch is actually doing excellently here is that it's what Clone Wars did, first of all, was give humanity to the clones. Yep. Obviously, we had to strip that away when Order 66 came in. But you're still seeing some of that humanity. We're still seeing clones with that humanity from their perspective, even to the point of, we got Omega involved in here. And so you got these hardened, battled clones who now have to essentially parent and guardianship a young girl. Yeah,
I know.
And
what an angle.
It's giving a whole new angle to their humanity and everything. So that's what I liked about this one too. This was the one where they needed to fix the ship, and Omega and Hunter went after that creature that stole like the energy thing. The little they had to some sort of energy component into their ship that they had to repair or replace. And then what looked very similar to, although I did look it up, it's not the same creature. It did look like one of the creatures that's in Attack of the Clones that attacks them in the arena. Let's see, Reek, Acklay, the other one, the one that's not the Reek or the Acklay, but it turns out it's not the same animal. Yeah. And so it takes that thing, and then what's kind of cool is as soon as it bites down on that thing, you see these energy waves go through it. Like it eats energy. It's a very great little sci-fi premise. And they're on, how great is the animation on these episodes too? They're on this I don't remember the name of this particular planet that they land on, but it's just, and they got to put the breathers on, which is very much like Empire Strikes Back when they're inside of the creature in the asteroid field. And so they can't breathe the atmosphere. It's very dark. And then there's danger everywhere. I love that sort of like danger everywhere. Like you're in the desert with C-3PO in episode 4, and there's a giant skeleton of a dragon. Yeah. And you're like, oh, it's kind of dangerous out here. And the same thing here. Or the Night Watcher worm in The Force Awakens that peeks up after BB-8 and goes rolling away. You're like, there's danger around every corner. And so sure thing, when they're on this planet, they're like, we're not alone here. Yeah, I want to say the creatures, it's not a Gundark, but it looks kind of close to like a Gundark. I can't remember what they're called, but yeah, I like that.
The same sound as the one in the arena battle. Reek, Acklay.
I'm talking about like the one that looks like a little cat, like leopard thing. Yeah. I can't remember that one's name either.
I can't remember either, so I'm glad I'm not in a Schmodown competition right now.
Nice.
So it takes their part down in the cave, and then Omega goes off with the Hunter to track it down, because Hunter can track, and then once Hunter gets hurt, then the only person that can fit inside the cave is Omega. So it's her. It's her mission, and she's such an adventurous little kid, and it's really fun to watch her make those decisions of like, she's a person of action just like the Bad Batch, and I think by the time we get to season 2, they might progress her age and everything, and she will start becoming quite the warrior raised by these guys. But we're seeing the little beginnings of it right now. It's like, all right, into the cave I go. Let me grab the gun, let me grab the flashlight, and let's go in.
Do we think that she has like rapid age progression also, like some of the other clones do?
I would say so. Yeah, I think they all do. What does she look? Maybe 8 years old? But she probably is like, what do you think, 16 then or something, right?
Roughly.
She's only had certain amount of life to have life experience, but in terms of their rapid aging, she's got to be a teenager, even though she only looks like an 8-year-old. It's much like the rest of the Bad Batch all looks like, 20-somethings, but they're kind of kids as well, because it's rapid aging. They haven't had a whole lot of life experience. They've just been, their growth has been accelerated. But obviously she knows how to use a blaster, she's down for all kinds of adventure. So, there's something advanced in Omega.
She's got all the downloaded skills that any of the other clones already have, which is interesting because she has just a uniqueness about her, obviously, besides being a female while all the rest of them are males.
Yeah.
She's got the uniqueness of like an individuality and sense of adventure that adds to her humanity that the rest kind of don't necessarily have. They kind of have more of soldier mentality.
Well, that's what's cool, and I think it's the first episode, maybe second episode. She picks up a blaster and she's a dead shot, and you're like, whoa, okay, so she's got some clone, advanced training in her. Even though she's never picked up a blaster, it's in her head. She picks it up and she's a dead shot. And you're like, okay, yeah, she was raised to be a warrior in her programming, just like they were.
You know what I'm curious about is if they end up making her force sensitive.
I keep waiting for that moment because. I mean, if she was cloned from Jango Fett just like the others, and maybe they just manipulated, much like, they made one of them bigger, Crosshair's got better eyes, Hunter's got better nose, whatever, they made her a female off of Jango Fett's DNA. So, yeah, it's, what else could they have used? And it's in this episode that the Nala Se and Lama Su on Kamino say we've got another subject to clone from to create a new generation of clones, right?
I know that they were talking about obviously being worried about their operation being shut down. So it sounds like that they still have more that they can do and want to do, but just probably not going to be able to do it kind of a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I like that. I love that we're back on Kamino, that the Kamino gets to be a main part of this plot again, because, not much was made of the Kaminoans. Again, like Star Wars rips through their mythology, especially the movies of like, here's the Kaminoans. What? Huh? Oh yeah, it's a water planet. That's where they grow the clones. Anyway, we're moving on to the next thing. Like, Star Wars, like it just gives you a little taste.
That's the thing.
These shows give you a lot more of that. And I love that they have pride in these clones. They don't trust the Empire, and they're powerful on their own. They're like, all right, maybe we'll just build an army to counteract the military that they're doing under our noses to protect ourselves, because we're not just going to lay down, we're very proud people on a very private planet that's been invaded by the Empire in a way as well, who are using their technology for evil. And so the Kaminoans are like, we're just not going to go quietly into that good night. We're really, we've got ways of righting this boat out from under the Empire.
That's what, I know we were talking about it last time, but what I would really love to see is them just flip a switch on the clones, turn the clones against recruited soldiers on the Empire, and we just, in this show, at some point, we just have that all-out battle between recruited soldiers and clones.
Order 99, right?
Which, unfortunately, we know the way that would have to go based on, the story that we have with Star Wars and everything, but it would still be insane to watch.
Yeah. That if through the course of this season and maybe some of next, we're building up the conscripted soldiers, we're getting closer to the stormtroopers that we will see in episode 4, but there's still a lot of clones there, and that the last laugh on that is the Kaminoans have on the Empire. Be kind of cool. Yeah, a lot of great mythology, could go anywhere.
And they could easily do a lot of fun stuff with it too, especially as we're seeing how the tone is so different than say even Clone Wars. I mean, Clone Wars had its dark moments. Pong Krell, the Jedi Pong Krell, who kind of turned on all of his troops and everything. That was a dark moment that I remember from Clone Wars. But this one, I mean, we're talking about Crosshair going with the troops out to Saw Gerrera's camp and just essentially having them gun down innocent civilians. It's whoa, this is not a show for kids anymore.
It's dark. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's coming closer to the tone of the original trilogy. And by the way, I didn't mention it last week, and it's now said in episode 3 of this, I'm just following orders. In history, right, that there is we were just following orders comes from the Nazis during the trials of the Nazis, that was the excuse given. Is well, how could all of these farmers put a uniform and a gun in their hand and then they just decide that they can kill anybody, innocents, put in prison? And they say, we were just following orders. I mean, that is a really dark thing that Crosshair keeps saying, good soldiers follow orders.
Yeah.
I mean, that is pure Nazi, because what I didn't realize is that the stormtroopers is what they called Nazis. Stormtroopers were stormtroopers when I was a kid. Star Wars stormtroopers. Yeah, and then later on, when I started discussing it with adults and in school and stuff like that, and we were started talking about films as film, and one of my teachers said, this is the analogies here are straight up war, and particularly World War II. They are called stormtroopers, and pointed that out. It's like, that's what the Nazi soldiers were called. I was like, holy shit, that is dark. Yeah. So here we are. That darkness is coming back. Man, the directors of this show know Star Wars well. Yeah,
I mean, it's almost as if that's what Lucas meant from the beginning when he created the whole thing.
Absolutely. No, I mean, Dave Filoni is a George Lucas whisperer. I see George Lucas all over this. Absolutely. In fact, at the beginning of episode 4, we'll get into episode 4 in a second, but I was just like, George Lucas must love this show. Love it. It just feels so George Lucas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love about Dave Filoni having that creative control over these shows, is that he feels like he's somebody who is he's just sat at George Lucas's feet for hours and days and weeks and months on end, just like absorbing all the Star Wars from George himself, and then, okay, I got it. Now I'm gonna.
Yeah, I also feel like he was. I'd be curious how the relationship between him and George Lucas started, because I also feel like it was a sort of thing where Dave Filoni was, they just needed people to direct the animated shows. George Lucas wasn't going to be there every day. In fact, I feel like I heard that George Lucas got the show started, kind of stepped aside a little bit, let it just be a cartoon for a while, and then fell back in love with it in a way and put himself back in the show. And I feel like that's a matter of not necessarily Dave Filoni's like, let me talk up to George Lucas. It was that they are in a like mind, and that George Lucas is like, wow, this guy, I really want to work with this guy. I almost feel like George Lucas is like, boy, I really want to work with Dave Filoni. Let me come in and crack some story. Because I think Lucas came back like in a full, like, cracking the stories of like season 3 or 4 of the Clone Wars. Like, how about a story like this? And then they would put it to the writers and get it done. But it was like generated a lot by the stories by George Lucas. He and Filoni are just of perfect like minds, and I think that just came together naturally. I don't feel like it's like Dave Filoni's like, let me try and think of what George Lucas want to do. It's like, no. If you love Star Wars the way we do, the way Dave Filoni does, you just get it, but being able to translate that is, sometimes George Lucas had trouble translating it to the movies as well.
I would be surprised. Like, I know Lucas doesn't necessarily have like any kind of official role with Lucasfilm anymore. Yeah. But I would be surprised to find out that Dave Filoni's not like on a weekly call with him in some form or fashion over a lot of the stuff that they're doing. Like,
I have a feeling they're friends, and it's not official at all. That those two are of a like mind. That like Dave Filoni. There's a level that, some people think they get Star Wars, but there's you also hear people talk about Star Wars that you're like, you just don't get it, even though you're talking in an official capacity. But Dave Filoni just clearly gets it on a very sub level, like really just deep down in the blood, in the midichlorians of the Star Wars. Like, he gets it. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like a complete side note. This is what I loved when during like the April Fools or whatever, the Schmodown actually put out the image of like Dave the Wolf Filoni versus George the Maker Lucas. And I was like, would that not be like the funnest thing to watch? I know there's no way that's going to happen, but that would be like the most fun thing ever to see.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Star Wars trivia, Dave Filoni would whip his ass, because I don't think George memorizes any of the facts. They just, he just creates it.
I just remember. Yeah. I think this episode 3 ended off with, I know we saw like, we had like a zoom in on Crosshair for a little bit, which I think is to signify like, no, that he's still cognizant in his head. He's doing stuff that he has no control over, and he doesn't want to be a part of this. So I do think eventually we are going to see Crosshair reunite with the Bad Batch.
Yes.
I'm eager to see how that's going to play out, though. Like, how does he make his escape? How do they rescue him and all that? But
that's going to be a triumphant moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Because I love Crosshair. It's just, I weep for him, because it's so sad what's happening, but he's such a great character. Like even when, before Order 66, when you saw him in the old Clone Wars or whatever, it's like, yeah, he's just that intense guy, It's like he don't take any crap. He's just like the rest of the Bad Batch, like he's a pretty serious guy, and I love his specialty, and the sniper and everything. And it's like, yeah, the Bad Batch can't complete these missions. As the great thing is each one of them plays a perfect role, and now a piece of them is missing. Isn't that a line in one of these episodes where it's like he says, it's the five of us, and somebody says, well, the five of us is Crosshair, something like that. There was some line like that, and it's like, yeah, reminding them that like, no, Crosshair's still a part of this group. We have to go get him.
Yeah, and I do really like that they chose him as the character to do this kind of storyline with, because as a sniper, he's going to be the ask no questions, just get the job done kind of a character, kind of a soldier. And so that's the character that you're making the one who's going to be doing the good soldiers follow orders, and I think that just poetically plays out perfectly.
Yeah, the other thing is like he in Crosshair is so good and so brutal, and again, like when he sets his sights on something, it's toast. That when his chip reverts or whatever he does to go good again, I weep for whoever tries to stop him. He's a one-man army, can be. If he decides like, I'm leaving Camino and nobody's going to stand in my way, and I'm going to go back to the Bad Batch, like, good luck. Because, like, you just don't want to face him. He is far better than any of those other troops, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble when Crosshair decides, I'm leaving, I'm going back with my friends, and screw your chip.
I mean, it's funny. You have to imagine that Crosshair probably leaves as they're recruiting soldiers before they actually teach them how to shoot, right?
Yeah. I get you.
Because he's got perfect shot and the stormtroopers don't.
That's true. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good one.
I do like this. They might decide to go back after him after they meet Rex. Does Rex get to play a part of it as well? I mean, do we see Rex go on a mission with them too? I kind of hope so.
We saw Rex in the original trailer for the Bad Batch. We know he's coming up, right?
I don't remember if we did see him.
Or is this just an idea like, at some point they're going to meet up with Captain Rex?
I think it's just an idea. I know that they briefly mentioned Rex with Cut in episode 2,
right? And
just the connection that Cut and Rex had. So I wouldn't doubt that they probably will try to go meet up with Rex. I mean, he's out there. He's
out there.
He's got a story that we haven't quite seen yet until obviously Rebels, but.
Yeah, but when we see him show up in Rebels, it's like, oh, he's lived a whole life in between the last time we saw him in the Clone Wars. Like, he's out in the desert living on an ATTE or something like that, like
we might
build a whole house on it or something.
We might even get to see, like, Rex might pop in with the Bad Batch and they might do missions to save, was it Wolf and, what's his name? The other one.
Other clones.
The other clone. Gordon in the chat will probably let me know. But for them to be able to do that storyline, I mean that option's there. I love seeing this kind of show where we're following characters that we have not known. Gregor. That's it.
Oh, okay. I must not have seen those episodes from the Clone Wars. I don't know Wolf and Gregor.
Yeah,
There's some episodes of Clone Wars I haven't seen. I can't wait to begin them again because this is just watching the Bad Batch. I'm like, give me some more Clone Wars, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's good to watch the Bad Batch then and just like dive back into Clone Wars and everything and see kind of leading up to that. But
I did, but I'm on like episode 3 of the Clone Wars on my rewatch. So
there's only so much time in the day.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I do like that could be potentially where they go is there's just so much story to explore and just seeing these characters that we've not known since before the Clone Wars and this whole world, this whole side that we haven't seen come to fruition yet. And there's possibilities are kind of endless type of situation.
Now let's wrap up episode 3. One fascinating thing that happens in 3 is a Star Wars format, a classic format of cutting back and forth. You always see that in the third act, usually of the trilogy movies, that at some point there will be a fight on land and sea and air, basically. We're going from here to there. So we get that in a slightly different form because we're going back and forth between the mission to Onderon and then the Bad Batch trying to get their part back from the kitty cat on the moon there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, this feels really Star Wars to go back and forth.
Because they did that in like even Revenge of the Sith, where you're seeing like the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar. You're seeing Yoda's going after the Emperor.
Right.
All these kinds of different angles happening at the same time, and that's what I do love about the third act of Star Wars. Like you brought up, is kind of just wrapping everything up together,
and done to no greater artistic degree than the Last Jedi. That sequence brings me to tears. The fight between Kylo Ren and Rey, the Holdo maneuver, and is there one other? No, it's just back and forth between those, I believe. But oh man, that is taking that format and conducting it like an orchestra. There's just a perfection to that. That is the format brought to its absolute most perfect form. But we're not here to talk about that. Absolutely. Oh, you know what else happened in episode 3? Of the show is a new Imperial who I thought was Mahdi. I was like, oh, we got an Imperial, that other Imperial that's looking after I guess he's the guy that trained the new troops, the conscripts.
Rampart. Yeah.
Rampart, right. Oh, isn't that a great Imperial name?
He's a bad guy too.
Oh, Admiral Rampart. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But that was cool. I'm like, I love me an Imperial officer. You know, he's going to get choked someday, but he's an Imperial officer now. He's bringing the conscripted soldiers in. He's very proud.
Yeah, he's not long for this universe for sure. Nope. But yeah, that's going to wrap up episode 3. Let's definitely dive into episode 4 because there's a lot of fun stuff that happens here, including
a lot of fun stuff in this one. This one had
back.
A lot more going on. Yeah. Now, did 3 end with the bounty hunter? Blanking on her name. Fennec Shand.
Mm-hmm.
That ended with her, right? That was kind of the big like, I'll get him.
No, that was this last episode. Episode 4 ended with because she's going after Omega.
Oh, okay. So we only see her for the first time in the show at the beginning of episode 4.
Right.
Character from The Mandalorian, who came in so fully formed. I had to ask friends, I'm like, is she from the book or something? Like they're treating her, which, Star Wars should. It treats everything like, well, you know who this is. You know what the Force is. I mean, if in episode 4 is like, oh, it's a lightsaber. You know what one of these is. The Clone Wars. So we'll just drop that reference and move on. The Imperial Senate. What? There's a Senate. Moving on.
Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean she didn't exist in this universe and have a whole entire story before you meet her.
Yeah.
And
man.
And they get to explore that, and the fact that it's so beautiful what Dave Filoni is doing now with these shows, and obviously like Mandalorian in partnership with Jon Favreau. But seeing her like introduced there, and then all of a sudden we see the trailer for Bad Batch, and she pops up in the trailer, and we're like, that's the person from The Mandalorian.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well,
I love it because in episode 4, I mean, she's the Boba Fett of these shows. She's the bounty hunter. She's the badass. She's if you need somebody gotten, then and you can't call Boba Fett because he's still in the Sarlacc at this point, I think, in the or whatever. He's still walking the desert at this point, maybe.
Not yet. I think this because this is before A New Hope. So
right.
We don't know what Boba Fett's doing at this time.
Oh, you're right. He's out there somewhere.
Because we know, like, I think the last we saw him, he was like hanging out with a group of other bounty hunters and stuff. But that group, I think, split up, and we have no idea where Boba Fett's at right now.
But I love that character in a Star Wars movie. So she is just filling that Boba Fett role here, which I just love. Oh, cool ship too. Oh my god, the first shot of it is that ship in space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got a cool ship.
That really is the thing I loved about the bounty hunters. They have all the cool gadgets always. They have all the cool like ships and everything, but they also always have like the coolest. I don't want to say storylines, but like their characters themselves are always the coolest. Like Cad Bane back in the Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. That's a character I want to see come back in like a live action form of some form. Maybe like Book of Boba Fett or something. I would love to see Cad Bane come back.
Would love to see that.
But
he's the only one that they put in the Clone Wars that really gets up to the level of like a Boba Fett or an IG-88 or something like that. It's like, oh man, this is a classic epic. I mean, when you see him in the Clone Wars, you're like, this might as well be one of the characters standing next to the line of bounty hunters in The Empire Strikes Back. He fits right in. Exactly.
I mean, he's like one of the few ones that has ever been able to go like toe to toe with Jedi. So, I mean, there's just something cool about him. But yeah, we do get that same kind of feeling with Fennec here, as what I think is actually interesting with her character is we've seen her kind of play the good guy now, in the last season of Mandalorian, where she's
Right.
kind of she's I mean, she's probably towing the line. She's probably like
They're
anti-hero.
always on their own side. It's like
Yeah.
Boba Fett does good for the team, but he's on his own side,
Yeah, exactly. And so we're kind of seeing her, the flip side of her in this role, because she's going after one of our heroes. She's going after Omega. So we're not rooting for her to do so, but at the same time, we also don't know yet who she's working for, and she's definitely working for somebody.
And shades of Zam Wessel. In the so they land on the planet Pantora, which I love because my cat's name is Pantera. So I thought that was very cute. So they land on Pantora, and for the first time in the Bad Batch, we're seeing a populated city. We're seeing a spaceport. It's got a kind of half. It's got a Coruscant vibe about it. Less populated than that, obviously, because that's one giant city.
Yeah.
But I liked seeing the populated planet, and we're seeing all these alien races that we've seen before. They land, and we see a Nine Num, a little mini Nine Num, kind of an Ugnaught Nine Num, an Ugnum, if you will,
an Ugnum.
And just like and such a vibe of Star Wars is like you land in the spaceport and the word is out now. It's looking for Omega to all the bounty hunters or whatever. And the guy immediately, they try and bribe the guy, but he immediately goes, "Hey, if anybody wants so and so," just like in episode 4 when the snout-nosed guy Gurinden, they walk by and it's like, "Here's your guy. Here's your guy."
Or what was it in Maz's bar?
Right.
In
Two people do it there. One of them's like, "Hey, Resistance, we got this here." Hey. Yes, Bazine Natal and GA97 are the two rats in that one.
That's their names. They were just on the tip of my tongue. No, they weren't. I'm lying.
I love the obscure names. I can't believe I forgot Snoke earlier.
But yeah, I love this. Like you were saying, the populated area. They were landing on this planet, and I was like, Pantora. And I was looking at it, I was like, I feel like we've seen this in a movie. This looks like it's a location that was established in a film already.
Yeah. I looked it up, and it might show up in the Clone Wars. I feel like I read an article just to see if that was a reference. I think it is in an episode of the Clone Wars, but that one I've seen.
Because I think the main population is the blue skin. They're the blue skin aliens. Which I believe is where the character that George Lucas played, I believe him and his daughter at the Opera House,
correct.
I believe they are aliens that are from this planet. So yeah, they did actually visit this planet in Clone Wars.
You're right.
Panterans.
Pantorans, yes.
The Pantorans, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. George Lucas's character, because my first thought was Grand Admiral Thrawn, but he looks a little different. And you're right, the facial painting and stuff is just like George Lucas's. Baron Papanoida.
Yep. Papanoida, yeah.
Papanoida.
So it was really cool to again, that's what I love about these shows. That's what I love about like the universe of Star Wars, is being able to dive back into locations that we have been before. I've seen this place before, right? You have seen this place before, and kind of see like what changes, what shifts over time, and all that in these different places.
Yeah. And we get a walrus man. We get all these different. We start to recognize all these different characters or creatures and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really love the spaceport atmosphere, and they're all like saluting the soldiers because the war's over. It's like a victory parade for stormtroopers, and you're like, wow. It's again, what's the point of view of everybody on this planet? It's like, hey, the war's over. Here's the heroes. They haven't seen the point of view that these guys have changed. They think these are the exact same clone troops like Captain Rex that we cheered in the Clone Wars, the citizens. And so you got that point of view, and Omega's like, why are they cheering them? It's like, because they won the war. It's like, oh yeah. Like, you imagine if all the soldiers come back from World War II, but were turned evil on the transport and land in America, everyone's still going to be like, yeah, victory parade down, Madison Avenue or whatever, New York, a Valley of Heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, like, because definitely the spaceport vibe feels a lot like a ship port that we would see here when people are like pulling in after being away for a long time, soldiers coming back after a long time. There's a mix of all kinds of different people in these places because they're coming from all over the place.
Droids.
Droids. You got
protocol droids. Yeah. R2 units.
That's what I actually really loved is Hunter trying to pass Echo off as a droid also, which is great because he's got the arm that's like a screwdriver or whatever. And
right. I love that. I love the confrontation between him and the protocol droid too. And he's like, I think, what does he pull his gun and say something like, if you don't tell anybody, I won't, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. He's like, I've got this. Don't worry about it. And then I love the confrontation between him and the shopkeeper at the end. Is like, you got me for a good deal. You got me.
That's right.
I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's good. And then the action, we get a full-on Coruscant chase. And speaking of Zam Wesell, this felt so perfectly. And we haven't seen this type of Star Wars action, which is absolutely a part of Star Wars, this type of action sequence. I mean, sometimes the criticism of Star Wars is like, oh, it's just set up to an action sequence. I'm like, I know. That's not a criticism. That's what we're here for. And I haven't had one of these yet in the Bad Batch, and here we are. Nice big speeder chase. Oh, it's so good.
100%. I was taken all the way back to Attack of the Clones with that. Mm-hmm. I was like, this feels exactly like that, and I'm all about it because, again, I grew up with the prequels, so these were the Star Wars movies as a kid that I was like, ooh, kind of at. So being able to like touch back on and hit me in that nostalgia bone essentially with that sequence was perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, she even kind of looks like Zam Wesell a little bit. She's got the, just all you're seeing is the eyes and jumping from ship to ship and falling and all that stuff. And then the constant danger of all the shipping lanes and like, high speed highway that they're trying to do this on is like, that had all the feels. I was like, all right, now we're in real Star Wars territory here. I love it.
Yeah, I love them bringing her back. I love them doing like the action sequence with her there and everything. I think if I were to have like one question that I want to leave off with like episode 4 is, who the heck is she working for?
Right. Who called her in? We don't know. Oh, I love that. She gets a hologram at the beginning of shot of Omega, and she's like, I'm on it. You know, and hits the hyperspace, and now there's huge danger, but we have no idea who called her in.
We get nothing. We don't get a voice. We don't get we get nothing about who she's talking to. Is she talking to the Kaminoans? I don't know. I mean,
so that's a big question we're left with is who wants Omega? Because I don't even think the Empire wants Omega. They don't know she's missing. They don't care. And didn't the Kaminoans know that she went with them and that was...
Yeah, I would say Nala
like they're okay with that because they don't trust the Empire. They're like, get our prized child out of here.
It's the best chance for her survival. We need her to survive. There's something special about. There's going to be something special about her. That's why I'm saying almost with certainty. I feel like she's going to end up being Force sensitive because that just feels natural.
Which brings back the question of in the Kaminoans said, we're our much like multiplicity, our clones are degrading as we're trying to make a copy of a copy.
Yeah. And
you finally get down to the Michael Keaton that smearing pizza on his face or whatever. But then they say we have a new source. Now, I'm wondering if Omega, because it's a female, was already cloned from a different source. And that perhaps she was... But they said she's from the same batch as the Bad Batch. So... her augmentation might be that her sex is female and other things, but they might have done an experiment because, the Kaminoans, people don't like the theory that midichlorians have anything to do with the Force, but basically the midichlorians are just a juiced up life force. It's almost like, well, I've got red blood cells in me and there's something they're made of carbon just like, that tree out there, that there's a concentration of that makes you uber human, and that is exploitable by the Kaminoans to go, I wonder if we can create a Jedi because, if we take Jango Fett's DNA, we're cooking up a new one, but let's just add, some there's midichlorians. Let's just add those to that and see what happens. Yeah. Without training, without knowing it, anything like that, you wouldn't necessarily just become a Jedi, but the potential is there a little more than it is. And if you tried to teach Captain Rex how to move something with his mind,
And it's also like, I mean, we talk about the force, and the force is in all things, it moves through all things. It's the living force or whatever.
Life.
So it's not
Concentrated life.
it's not necessary that Omega even had to have had midichlorians pulled into her DNA. It's likely that she probably did. They probably spliced something from somewhere, but maybe we see those midichlorians like take hold because the force, who knows, the force somehow moves in through Omega. Like,
I mean, even forgetting midichlorians, it's like in the cloning process, it's like, ooh, let's try and concentrate life. Let's make her extra lifey or whatever they do. Yeah. Well, you're going to come close to some sort of midichlorian-like effect if you do that. You're like, let's put a little something extra in Omega. I mean, they obviously really think Omega is the next evolution in some way. They wanted her protected, with the Bad Batch.
What, like, they almost are making Omega like the Captain America potential, like we found the right one. Let's juice him up and it's gonna work. That might be kind of like what they're doing, only with like force stuff.
Yeah,
who knows? And then what that leads me to believe is that whoever Finnick is working for maybe is just somebody we haven't met yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very curious if the new source the Kaminoans are talking about is a Jedi of some sort.
And all possibilities, all things that could happen. And I guess hopefully the fan in me hopes that we find out sooner rather than later. But also, I don't want to sit here and say like, hey, tell your story this way. No, I want them to reveal when they feel like revealing. I mean, we've got how many episodes left of this season?
How many are there going to be? I don't even know.
I think there's 16 in total, but we got the first two in that 1 week. So we got the Tuesday, Friday episodes, but
yeah.
So another 14 weeks. So we're past 2 weeks now. So probably another 12 episodes or so, I think. Yeah.
So there's a lot of story left.
I wasn't told there'd be math.
I was told there would be no math.
So
by the way, anybody, I know that people throw that line out a lot. You know what that line's from, right?
Actually, I don't think I do.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It's what's funny is it's become a pop culture line. I ask anybody watching this and you afterwards, go afterwards and look on YouTube, Chevy Chase, Gerald Ford, math, and watch this whole sketch. The entire line before it's a debate between Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford for the 76 election, 70, what year was that be? 74 election maybe. Mm-hmm. And it's a really good sketch, but the entire question before that and the way Chevy answers it is, because they give this whole thing of like, now, if the, something percentage of this, according to GDP and something like that, and you just watch Chevy's just face go, whatever. And he's like, it was my understanding that there would be no math. It's just a really great punchline. Anyway.
Was that like an SNL thing or is that like a freestanding sketch?
No, it was an SNL sketch. Yeah. It was my understanding that there would be no math. It's such a Chevy Chase's Gerald Ford thing to say.
That's hilarious. Well,
yeah, really good sketch.
Is there anything else that you think that we need to touch on from episode 4? I think
I think we've got all the theories out there. We discussed these and what's great about them. And yeah, I mean, there's just so much story left. It's going to be so good. And they're doling it out just little bits. And I think it'll be like Mandalorian where it's like, let's just give you about maybe 4 minutes of deep mythology for the rest of this episode. And then back to the adventure. And just 4 minutes of deep mythology that's coming up. And then back to the adventure. And then, and I feel like the Mandalorian would then do another episode where it's much more heavily weighted for a big move. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, next with these two being kind of like a little more light, kind of fun adventures, I feel like we're primed now. Either the next episode or the one after that certainly will be like, all right, now we're going to make a major move, and find out who's been pulling some of these strings,
That's also what I love about this show running concurrently, essentially with Mandalorian, and then Book of Boba Fett's also coming out, and I know we got Ahsoka coming up also. Like all these shows are going to be running nearly about the same time.
Oh, we're so blessed! So much Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, how are they going to all like connect and intertwine, and what's going to happen? Oh, it's going to be so good.
It's going to be.
And we're pretty much going to cover all of them here on this channel, here on Cinefanatics. I know that. For sure, my brother will be back doing Star Wars stuff with Mandalorian because he is wrapped up in that one for sure. We can talk later, but you're welcome to also chime in at any point on that if you ever have the free time whenever Mandalorian starts back up. So that's something that we can look into later for sure. But
lots of Star Wars to talk about. Very exciting times.
So much.
I mean, sure. I'm a guy who's gone through 15 years of my life with no Star Wars at times. And, I've said this before on lots of these shows. I'll say it again. As of 1983, or maybe 1984, there were rumors that we're going to make another Star Wars movie sometime after that. But 83, 84, 85, 86, and then you finally like, you know what? They're never making another Star Wars movie. And then they finally made the sequel trilogy or prequel trilogy. And then you're like, okay, well, that's it. That's it. That's it for Star Wars. That's all the Star Wars we're going to get. And then we had the cartoon and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But, it's equivalent of Ewok Adventure, TV movie compared to the movies. And then we got the sequel trilogy. And now here we go. We don't get to go a year anymore without new Star Wars, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's just so much to dive into. Mm-hmm. Hey, Adam, I appreciate you being here, jumping in here, and let's talking about Star Wars. Let's do this again, obviously. Let the people know where they can find you and what's going on with Adam Witt.
Well, I would check out themovieguys.net or at themovieguys on Twitter. And if you like Star Wars, then you probably like Harrison Ford. So you probably would enjoy Paul Preston and myself every other week now. We thought we could get ahead. Now it's every other week. Covering the entire filmography of Harrison Ford from the very beginning till the very end. So we have just released The Conversation. Did you know that there's a Francis Ford Coppola movie called The Conversation and that Harrison Ford is really evil in it? And he's very intense and pretty cool and even makes Christmas cookies. Yes, that is a reference to the movie The Conversation with Gene Hackman. Just a great movie. God, if you like your 70s paranoid thrillers, go check out The Conversation and then listen to Paul and I talk about it. Subscribe on your podcast app or any place where you hear any podcast. Actually, we're on everything now, and that is the Ford Fiesta. From the
I might have to check that one out for sure.
Oh, you do. You'll enjoy the hell out of it. I mean, first of all, who's, with the exception of American Graffiti and The Conversation, who's even heard of his first 5 movies? But we watched them and we got a lot of joy out of it. Those are fun episodes.
And then who's not attracted to the idea of Harrison Ford playing a bad guy?
Right. Oh yeah, The Conversation. He's
Indiana Jones, Han Solo. He's good. He's good guy. What's happening?
Well, we're still at the point in his career where, I mean, he's a bad guy in American Graffiti. He's a fun one. He's a rat rodding racing guy, but he's the villain in that movie. If there is one, it's a Bob Falfa. So yeah, and next week will be Star Wars. So he is going to make his turn into good guy and never look back.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun. Yeah, definitely check that out, guys. As for our channel here, you're on our channel, obviously, youtube.com/cinefanatics, but you can also check us out. We're doing all sorts of stuff up at that Patreon link, patreon.com/cinefanatics. We're doing movie trivia nights. We're doing watch-alongs. We're doing all sorts of stuff. For just $1, you can even jump into our Discord and be a part of that movie-loving community over there. We've got other stuff coming up. Tune in on Tuesdays. We've got the Tagline. That's our movie news show that we do every Tuesday night. All sorts of stuff coming up. I know Loki's going to be coming up here pretty soon, and that's going to be on Wednesdays. We might have a guest that's going to be joining us for those as well. Maybe you want to tune into that and find out. But all sorts of fun stuff coming up here. Exactly. Ooh. You can follow us on Cinefanatics on Twitter, Instagram, at Cinefanatics MLP. You can follow me specifically at Chris Adams MLP. All sorts of places on the webs to check us out, and yeah, all sorts of fun stuff we're going to be doing here. But
well, I know I will.
Yeah. As for this one tonight, though, we want to thank you guys for jumping in, joining us, and watching along. If you're watching this after the fact, you're watching this on the replay, throw down in the comments. Let us know what ideas you have, where you think this show is going. What you think. Is there something that we missed while we were breaking this down? I want to hear about it because maybe we might touch on it next time. That would be a lot of fun. So let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you give this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed on this channel for more stuff, more content. more Star Wars content. We're definitely going to be hitting that. So again, thank you guys for showing up, for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you guys on the next time.
For more Star Wars!
For more Star Wars!